Tis the season.
Yeah.
Miss Ellis, if you want to go ahead, we'll talk while they're doing that.
Okay. Well, if we can have your attention, we're going to go ahead and start. I want to thank you for coming to Coffee with a Cop today. I want to thank Tony, Detective Tony Thomason. He's going to be leading our session today. I want to thank all the other officers that are here representing the city of Griffin and the county, maybe. I want to thank Raymond Ray for being here. It's one of our commissioners. And Mr. Gildry, he's taping this, so everybody be on your best behavior. Okay, don't pick your nose or nothing or he'll catch it, okay? Anyhow, this is a session that they've been going around doing, and I think you're going to learn a lot of little tips that you can take care of yourself a little better. We want you to share this information with your friends, your loved ones, and hopefully you'll never, ever, ever need it, but it's nice to have it in your back pocket, just in case, okay? So with that, we want everybody to settle in, get your donuts, your coffee, and I'm going to turn it over to Detective Tony.
Thank you, thank you. Again, I'm Tony Thomason with the police department. Let me do a quick introduction of these men behind me. Lieutenant Darrell Dix here, he works at the police department with us, and he'll also be able to answer questions and mix and mingle. Corporal Kelly Jackson, he's a detective with me as well. Corporal Brandon Tarrant, and of course he is a uniform patrol officer, as you can see, and so we're bringing some different perspectives. In the hall are some other officers that will be making their way in. Captain Britt has the brown suede jacket on, and Morris Pike, you may know Lieutenant Pike. Morris Pike has been around for a long time, does a great job in the community. Corporal Todd Harris, I know you can't remember all those names, and you don't need to. The reason we brought all these officers with us is to provide you some diverse conversation. This is kind of a social event as well as an informative event. So we want you to talk with us and ask us questions. We're not going to just come in and lecture you and then tell you to go on about your way. So we do want to give you some good information, but we do want to invite you to talk with us and ask us questions. And even when we break up, we're not going to pack up and run out the door. We'd like to stay around and answer questions and talk to you about maybe your individual situation if you have some kind of situation to speak with us about. So to get started, the reason we are having this today is not just the holidays, because at any time of year, you can find yourself being a victim of, you name it. It can be fraud, some other kind of theft, and violent crime. It is a holiday season, and we're going to talk about some popular holiday scams, if you will. But we'll also talk about other general crime and how we can work together, the police department and the community, to try to prevent some of those things. So let me first of all say that when crime happens to us, me individually or you individually, it is certainly different than when you hear about a friend or somebody else. We do have crime in our region, so certainly we're not going to say that this is the safest town in the world. We do have some crime. However, I do want to say that it's not as dangerous as the news sometimes may lead us to believe. And I'm not saying the news is inaccurate. What I'm saying is that the news covers a lot of horrific events that happen. I watched it this morning as I was getting ready, so you may have done the same thing. And DeKalb had a man get killed overnight. I think Atlanta had some shootings. We see those every morning. And when we see that, we just think, man, what's the world coming to? It's happening everywhere. And so again, statistically, it's very unlikely that you're going to be a victim of a violent crime or that you're going to even be a victim of a crime at all. Statistically, it's unlikely. So we don't want you to be paranoid. We don't want you to think that around every corner somebody's going to jump out and grab you. That's just not the case. We don't want you to live in fear. But we do want to be realistic and say that all of us, including myself and even these other officers, are subject to some bad behavior. You know, somebody can try to scam us or steal from us. So I think it's we want to balance being prepared, being wise, I guess, we don't want to be paranoid or scared. So that's, first of all, I just want to say that. We're not here to try to beat the drum of let's grab our torches and be scared to try to go find these bad guys. That's not where we're coming from today. Let me first start by asking how many folks in here, you don't have to raise your hand, but you can if you like. How many folks in here have been a victim of an internet scam? How many folks have ever done that? Okay, thank you for raising your hand. Okay, 2. All right, I'm a little surprised, but because 2 is a lot. 2 is a lot for this number of folks, and there may be somebody that didn't raise their hand either. How many folks have been solicited for an internet scam? How many folks have received a dumb email? Probably everybody. You probably raised your hands twice because we get inundated with these emails, and right away, most of us recognize this is a scam. So give me some examples of what you've seen that you recognize right away as a scammer email.
I have a cousin in Ethiopia. I don't need to give him my bank account.
Thank you. That would be a good clue, absolutely.
You just go for it.
Yes, ma'am.
PayPal and bank, where I don't bank with Chase Bank. So,
Okay.
they're trying to get me to come to that website.
Now, that's a little more sophisticated than the example that she brought up, and let me explain that for just a minute. Is anybody in here, or who all would use PayPal, or is familiar with PayPal? Okay. Okay, so maybe half the crowd. PayPal is a popular way to pay for things on the internet. It is a legitimate business, okay? PayPal is the real deal. However, in this day of sophistication, bad guys can copy their logos, they can hijack, if you will, their identity, PayPal's identity. And so when they reach out to us, it'll have all the right colors, it'll look like a legitimate email. And so that is a little tougher to discern that, hey, wait a minute, is this really PayPal contacting me or not? Sometimes that takes some thoughts like you're saying, have I made a recent purchase? Is this really PayPal? Do I need to, in turn, contact them? And so I'm going to jump ahead into that for just a minute, then we'll back up. If you're getting contacted by PayPal, whether it be on the phone or by the computer, you can fill in PayPal with Chase Bank or fill in PayPal with other organizations. When they reach out and contact you, the best thing to do is you can take whatever information they're trying to tell you. You can make it, write it down. Then disconnect with them, hang up with them. Then you reach out to PayPal based on a real number that you obtained via the phone book of the internet. Okay, now that way we know we're calling the real company. And then we'll say, I was contacted by so-and-so. And they advised I had a case number such and such, I had this issue going on. And if they tell you, I don't know what you're talking about, then clearly we know that was a scam. So does that make sense? That gives us an opportunity to verify that this was in fact a real person or real company contacting me. So does that make sense as a way to vet that or check against that to make sure that's real? Okay, good deal. So back to some of the more silly ones though. And when I say silly, I'm not trying to insult anybody that's ever fallen prey to that, okay? So when the internet came out, and as young as I am, I remember when the internet got popular as well. It was around the mid-90s, and so it's still kind of a new thing. And if you were older, even in the 90s, you may have had no interest or need to be on the internet. And so at this point now, you may just not be computer savvy. And so that's not That's not a bad thing, that's just who you are. That may make you an easier target for internet scams because you're not as savvy. It doesn't mean that you're dumb, it just means you're not as savvy. So when they send you these emails, and we consider, most all of us consider mail a legitimate thing. And so email is kind of a different form, an electronic form of a letter. And so when we think when those things come to my inbox, my specific email address, it must in fact be legitimate. Well, first of all, those email addresses, our email addresses, can be stolen, purchased, hacked. And so when we communicate with other businesses, they may in fact sell your information to other companies. And then we get what is now called spam. Is everybody kind of familiar with those terms? And those emails can be anything from, as we discussed, the Ethiopian type scams. It can be stuff, people trying to sell you things. It can be any number of things. It can be actually disgusting things that we won't even bring up in here that we have never gone to look at, but now all of a sudden we're getting inundated with this kind of a mail. But it's because you went somewhere legitimately and then your contact information was sold. But every time you receive an email, you need to be careful. Research the email. At least, for instance, if you don't recognize the sender, you may not even want to open that email up. Now, again, I'm not talking down to anyone. I just want to be cautious that, I want you to be cautious that you understand where we're coming from. Everybody familiar with what a computer virus is? Everybody's heard of a computer virus, I guess? Okay. Easy to get. Easy to get. Those can be embedded in emails. So it's not, it can be something that you, the most innocent thing that you've done is that you simply opened an email. And opening that email can actually let the virus into your computer. And so what was the point of that? Was the point of that to cause you to have a bad day and to cause you to have to take your computer somewhere to get it cleaned? Or what do you think that they were doing when they sent the virus? What do you think these viruses do? Okay. If you didn't hear what they're saying, these viruses are almost like scouts, if you will. These are soldiers that make their way into your computer, and then they recover your critical data. They can recover all of your, whatever information you have in there, your banking. Does anyone bank on the computer? Okay, we do too. We do too. It's very convenient. We just talked about making purchases through PayPal, eBay. You may store your birth information, your critical documents. You may have stored that information in there, Social Security numbers. Well, these soldiers go in and they find those files. And then they report back to their commander, the bad guy. And so while you're on the internet, these soldiers are constantly working, taking data out of your computer and sending it back to the bad guy. And then when they harvest this information, they can assume your identity. They can make purchases with your information. And so that's why we've got to be careful when we open these emails. Now, in the past, I'm not a computer expert. I wish I had invited an IT man, one of our internet or technology guys down. Used to, you would have to open an attachment. Everybody's kind of familiar with an attachment. You would have to open a picture or open some other message inside the message. And that would allow this to take place. They've become sophisticated enough now that simply opening the email is enough to cause the damage for some of the more sophisticated. So again, going back to what I was saying in the beginning, when you get the email, if the email is from somebody that you don't know, it's going to be a judgment call on your part, but you may just be better off not to answer the email, not even to open it, just to simply click over and put it in your trash can or in your spam box. You know, only communicate with known folks on your computer. And to make an example, Corporal Jackson, was it last week or
2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, on his police department email, it's C. Jackson at City of Griffin. We all have them, and I'll give you my card with mine, and you're welcome to contact me. C. Jackson, cityofgriffin.com. This is police email. He received a letter. Can you tell us what the letter was asking of you?
And we did something about 1.something million.
Yeah, he was wanting him to help a man get his $4 million, I think, out of Africa somewhere and get it over to America.
That's not relative. Yeah, I've got to eat it up. But I'm the only living heir of this person.
We're all gonna be filthy rich. So we're not exempt, you know, we're gonna get hit with the same things, and even an official government, you know, email, we're not exempt. We're gonna get those same things. A lot of that is automated, they just send those things out. That may have been another email that Investigator Jackson had communicated with another person. Their email address book was harvested or stolen, and then his email was in there. So the point I guess I'm making is that nobody's exempt from these. We just have to be wise and cautious about how we conduct ourselves in our email and what sites we go to on the computer, because these are some of the bad things that can happen with the viruses. Any questions on those topics right there?
There's a couple of things that happen also. One is, excuse me, your credit score. Okay, that if you go ahead and it's a free credit score, and so you go after it, but it isn't free because they've charged you for 2 other programs, and you start getting monthly billing out. Okay, so you've got to go in and cancel those programs the minute that the credit score is over. Another one is like on e-cigarettes. These, you know, the phony ones. They're free, and it says it's free, and they send you the sample, and then a month later, you receive a bill for $99. So, I mean, you've got to watch what is going on constantly.
Well, that's a good point, and you're right. Now, it sounds like these businesses that he's talking about, they're legitimate businesses. They have a little unscrupulous practice, okay, maybe not so ethical or upfront with what's really going on, but I don't think that that is something that we certainly need to be cautious about. We can find ourselves in debt, or we can find ourselves making purchases we didn't intend on making, but those sound like actual businesses. These Ethiopian scams, if you will, and I'm not bashing Ethiopia, I've never been there. The reason they're called that, the Nigerian scams or the Ethiopian scams, is because that is where most of them originated legitimately from. That is where the actual scammers were in a seat at a computer sending them over. Now those same things are done within the United States today. So the scammer may be your next door neighbor, hypothetically. I mean, it could be anybody within the country, it could be anybody anywhere. So the question may beg, why then don't we go arrest them? Has anybody wondered that? Why don't we go arrest these folks that are doing these computer scams? Well, first of all, my boss certainly would not let me fly to Ethiopia. He would be very upset if I made a request to fly to Ethiopia and lock up your cousin. But even jurisdictionally, let's say that again, it's your neighbor. Some of you folks in here may be tech savvy enough to understand me. Has anybody ever heard of a proxy server? Okay. Well, I didn't either until I went to the class, so don't feel bad. A proxy server is basically a back door. And so if I am T. Thomason at cityofgriffin.com and my IP address is 1234556, whatever it is, if I want to contact you for some no good, I don't want you to know who I am, right? Because I don't want the police to come and arrest me. So I'll go through a proxy server. And as crazy as this sounds, there's actually a business made to where I can pay a fee that will allow me to go through their IP address, which may be located in Denver, Colorado. I'm just picking a city. I'm not mad at Denver either. So when I contact you and you call the police and they research your IP address of your bad guy, they can say, aha, we got him. He's in Denver, Colorado. All the while, I'm here in Griffin, Georgia. You can actually use multiple proxy servers to where when they figure out that the one was a fake and then they find the next one, it's a fake. It's almost impossible for us with any certainty to find these internet scammers. We don't have the expertise. Can the federal government do it, with their expertise? Probably so. They can probably backtrack some of those and find out. But you've seen some of these embarrassing things that have happened in the news recently where secrets have been leaked. WikiLeaks. Everybody heard of WikiLeaks? They use a lot of proxy servers, and the reason that our powerful government, our United States, the federal government, can't shut them down is they oftentimes cannot find the source of the information. And that's why they're unable to lock those people up. And so these young folks, most of them are young, because they have a good grasp of the technology. They grew up on the technology. And unfortunately, they have a little bit of a deviant nature, apparently. They can get in there and they can hide themselves with these proxy servers and make it very, very difficult for us to prosecute them at all. So the best way that we see to attack this is for you guys, for us and the public, to be just very cautious with who we deal with on the computer, especially when we're doing computer transactions. Okay, so any questions about the, yes, ma'am.
I've had several phone calls from somebody that's telling me my computer is broken, there's something wrong with it, and yet they can't tell me the number of my computer.
Okay.
How do you know that? Well, we just know.
Has anybody heard, did anybody hear that? Everybody rather? All right, somebody has phoned and said your computer is broken. Has anybody received that phone call? Okay, not uncommon. You know what they're trying to do? They want you to allow them to remote in. Okay, so they're going to call and they're going to say your computer is broken. And coincidentally, you may have something wrong with your computer. And you say, wow, yes, will you help me? Absolutely, we'll help you. And they're going to tell you keystroke by keystroke how to fix your computer. What you're doing is you're allowing them to remote in. Does anybody know what that means? Okay. Yes, absolutely it is. It's almost like letting somebody in the front door of your home. So when they come into your computer, you'll see your icon moving around with their mouse. They can go into your files. And what they'll actually do is they will, with a couple keystrokes, they're going to download the hard drive of your computer into their computer while they're chatting with you, making out as if they're fixing your computer. So very good. Thank you for bringing that up.
I've had several of those, and I gave it to my son because he's very computer savvy,
Okay.
and he's saying, don't take these phone calls, Mama, this guy is trying to get in the computer. And I'm going, oh, okay.
Yes. Well, and the best way to safeguard against that again is you be the person reaching out. If you're the person calling the computer store, whether it be the one by Jeffrey's Barber Shop, what is his name? Expert. They're reputable. Okay, they've been in business. And then we have another one that's downtown.
Liberty.
Agape Liberty. Thank you. So I'm not picking a business, but they've been around. Okay, they're reputable folks. They're local folks. If you have a computer problem, you should make contact, right, instead of them calling you. I think that just makes a lot more sense, and it would make us feel better about the transaction. Yes, ma'am.
I have a suggestion. You know, when you go to you're talking about using a proxy server. I use a proxy email. When you go to Home Depot and they give you the card, or you go to Rite Aid and they give you the card and have to, you know, Kroger, you have to register the card. I don't use my regular personal email for that. I have an email set up specifically for that, so that anybody who emails me in my personal email box has gotten my email from me, but all these other people, so you're automatic. I mean, you get comfortable opening your own email like you get comfortable opening your own mailbox.
Sure.
But if you have proxy email that you give all those registration things, you're already going to be on guard when you open your email up looking for something.
Okay, good point. Let me explain that if anybody didn't understand it. She's saying that you can make up kind of a fake email. So you can go to, there's free email providers virtually everywhere. And so it can be a Gmail, a Hotmail, a Yahoo Mail, an ATT.net mail, and it can be something as silly as Ronald McDonald at ATT.net. It'll be a fake email. Now, it truly is a real email, if I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a real email.
But you know that you use that email for your business contacts, for the solicitations, if you will. So when you're applying for the credit cards or whatever you're doing, that way, when they send you advertisements and things like that, it's going to go to your Ronald McDonald, your clown email. but your personal email that you're gonna interact with your loved ones with, you can keep it secret. Is that kind of where you're?
That's exactly
Okay.
what I do.
All right, so that makes sense. Does everybody kind of understand that? Not a bad piece of advice. It's just whether or not you want to go to the trouble of doing that. Then you have to remember the other one and remember your password. That's always a problem. Yes, ma'am.
I still get phone calls sometimes, and it'll be people that say they're with my electric company or the bank, and something has happened, and they need my account number or my credit card number or something like that. So just be on the lookout for stuff like that too.
Well, let's skip into
And
that.
I usually say, well, I'll contact my bank and I hang up. But, you know, a lot of folks wouldn't do that. And then sometimes in the mail, every 3 or 4 months, I get something from somebody about my benefits when I die. And only, you know, that the government only gives you $255 or something like that. And on the back of it, they want you to fill out this stuff that's got your birthday, your social security number, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm going, how stupid. I mean, would anybody fall for that? I guess some people do.
Well, as innocent as it seems, so I'm going to do my best to remember these points so I can stay on. So this is very interesting information that we're going over. The critical information, social security number. All right, we already know how critical that piece of information is. Social security number. It's like our serial number, all right? Name and date of birth. Does anybody Facebook in here? Does anybody here Facebook? Okay. All right. Oftentimes your name is on Facebook, right? And then sometimes some of us put our birthday on Facebook. Do you do that? Does anybody do that? And then people send you well wishes. And in theory, that's a good idea, right? Because it's social media and we're having fun and people are saying, happy birthday. If I had your name and date of birth, I can apply for credit in your name, right? That's all I need. I can assume your identity. So be careful with doing those things. All right, now let me get back to this other point. I'm doing good. I can remember it. If somebody is calling you about you're overdue on your power or your water,
Oh, yeah, I get
okay, and if you don't pay me, give me your account so we can do a draft out of that, we're going to cut it off. We have talked with the folks at the city, and that's not how we do business. And I feel confident that EMC, you know, I don't know who your providers are, they don't do business that way. They're not going to call you up last minute and try to threaten you or intimidate you into making these payments. However, it's cold outside, and sometimes we don't want to risk it. Right? I mean, and they're only saying if you'll send me $50, $100, and you're thinking, well, I would rather send the $50 or $100 than be cold. I have to pay a cut-on fee, or I'll have to go a week without power. That's not how we operate. And that's another example of tell them, okay, hang up, call back yourself, right? Call back the number that you know yourself leads you to these providers and ask them. And they're going to tell you, no, that's not what we're doing. That's not how they do business. What if they show up at your door? Will we believe them if they showed up at the door and they said, hey, I'm with the local power. I've got a screwdriver in my hand. I'm here to cut your power off if you don't pay me. Again, we don't do business that way. So right away, there should be a dead giveaway that they're up to no good. So my recommendation to you is 2 things. First of all, go ahead and call 911 and have an officer come. If it turns out that the person is in fact a power person, no harm. The police came out, they verified who he was, and then you can elect to do whatever you elect to do. But the police can come and help you verify that. All right. Now, once you get off the phone with 911, the police are on the way. Do that first. Second thing, go ahead and call their boss. Go ahead and call that provider. Don't call the number that they're going to give you, right? Because they can say, you can call my boss, and they'll give you a number. Who are you calling, probably? Their friend, the guy waiting down the road, probably, right? So if you find the number yourself, you know it's legitimate. You can better trust that phone number. Also, receiving these phone calls. Does everybody have caller ID?
Yes.
Okay. We trusted caller ID for many years, right? When the number popped up, we knew who was calling us. That's right. I don't know if you heard her. She said, now we don't. There are apps for that. Has everybody heard that? I can get an app And I can put in the phone number I want you to see on your caller ID.
Is that right?
That's correct.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, maybe it was designed to be a gag, maybe,
No.
but clearly it can be used for criminal purposes. Because we trust our caller ID. And so if our caller ID says that, you know, this number, and I'll give you an example. Someone, this has been a few years ago, but somebody called a deputy, claiming to be a deputy. And they entered in the sheriff's office phone number, the real sheriff's office phone number. And so the deputy was fooled initially. When he answered the phone, he knew the sheriff's office was calling. He knew the sheriff's office was calling. And that person started talking to him, and he started thinking, I don't recognize this voice. Who is calling? So he asked, you know, who is this? And they said, Deputy so-and-so. Who is that? I don't know that deputy. And there may be 100 or so of us here, but I still don't know that guy. Finally, he realized he was being tricked. And so I guess my point is that you can't always trust your caller ID. You may want to save the $10 a month you spend on that.
Well, will it say unknown?
No matter.
No, it'll give a fake phone number.
It will actually come up as the number that they program in. And just making a joke, I could put in the phone number from the White House and call you. And I could say, hey, I'm the president. And you would have no way of knowing, you couldn't discern it from your caller ID. And so just be cautious. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to just share this with y'all. I work with the medical examiner's office for Fulton County.
Oh, wow.
And a couple of years ago, somebody was calling people and telling them, and it was coming up as our number, and was telling people, you know, you have a relative that's dead. And we were just getting inundated with people calling, and we're like, no, we don't know who this person is. And they kept saying, it's coming from your number. But, you know, we have like a trunk line within probably 70 other numbers, but it would always come from our trunk line. So we had to get, you know, police had to get involved. And it was somebody that was spoofing the number, and people would just show up. And I don't know what their purpose for doing it was. It was
Maybe just a
mean.
sick prank.
Yeah,
Sick
yeah,
prank.
it was just, yeah, it went on for days, and it was just, people were just calling for 5 minutes, you know, I just got a phone call, they actually brought their phones, and our number,
Showed, yeah.
our number was on the.
And it's very confusing. 'Cause- yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I just recently got caller ID.
Okay.
Now, the reason being, this no call list is, it's just.
Hooey?
It's more than a farm, it's in my
Okay.
book. But, you know, and so I'm constantly getting charitable or, you know, otherwise. And so it was just getting so annoying till I went ahead and got caller ID.
If everybody is being honest, then certainly caller ID is a viable thing. I just don't want you to have overconfidence in your caller ID. I guess is the illustration I'm making here. So, yes, ma'am.
Everybody was honest.
Right.
Let me tell you something a little scary. About 6 months ago, I received something on my email, and I think it was the Department of Defense. I don't remember if it was the Department of Defense, but it looked all legitimate. The nice colored stationery looked great, and it told me such and such and such, and if I didn't pay $400 within a certain amount of 72 hours, that they would block my computer. Well, my computer was already blocked, and then they sent me a picture of me. Now my little camera has a Buzz Lightyear Band-Aid over it, but, you know, I did call the FBI, that's a scam. Scary.
Thank you for verifying that.
Computer theft.
Did everybody hear that, by the way? That was a popular scam about a year, was it about a year ago?
About 6 months ago.
6 months ago. Okay, I heard of that about a year ago. Y'all familiar with that? It's a very generic message. It may say DOD, it may say FBI, but we're all scared of the federal government, right? So that's why they picked that thing, and so they think that immediately when we see that logo, we're immediately going to be shocked into action. We're going to do what they say. Because generally we're law-abiding folks, and we want to do what's being told of us to do. And so the message will say something like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have either downloaded music or images or such and such in violation of code section such and such. And we have evidence, and of course they show you a picture of yourself where a virus has gotten into your computer and they've activated your camera and they snapshotted you on your computer. And so wow, you're thinking, wow. And they say that if you don't pay us, and do you think that the government would do that, or would they, because if you committed a crime, or that's extortion, right? You pay us or we're gonna jail you. We're gonna come and lock you up. So the spin-off of that, then you had improved because you took yours to the computer shop and got it fixed. So the end of her story is she hung, or she knew better, she didn't react, took it to the computer store and got it repaired. The new spin on that same scam is that now the virus is proprietary. And so you can't take it to the computer shop and get it fixed. There was a recent, has anybody seen that article? The recent article is the virus is so new that nobody has a solution for it.
Experts didn't know about it.
Okay.
But they cleaned out everything they could, but it may still be there looking.
So you actually, if you were going to regain your data, you have to pay the ransom. Isn't that horrible? So,
Hopefully you're using a cloud or a.
okay, very good. My next, man, you're great. Y'all could have met without me. Very good. Her solution, if you didn't hear, is you back up your information. Okay, so let's say, worst case scenario, you get hacked. They tell you to pay me $400, and so you're smarter than them. You take it to the computer store, but then they say, sorry, we can't help you. What do? If you had backed it up pretty routinely, okay, which, does everybody understand what I'm saying, backing it up?
How often do you do that?
Well, that is going to be up to you. I'm going to suggest every time you do something critical or new in your system. But you can buy an external hard drive, and it has to be external.
Yeah.
Why would it have to be external?
So they can't hijack it.
Right, because, yes, the very same virus can get you. Now, once you receive the virus, if you plug into your hard drive, what happened to it? It's contaminated as well.
To the external too?
Yes, ma'am. If you plug into it after you get the virus, all right? So, back it up, and you can buy those pretty inexpensively now. You can plug in, move that information over. At the conclusion of your business day, if you will, so you got done entering some new data, whatever it is, you can download that to your external drive. If you don't do a lot of business, you can probably do it on thumb drives. If you do a lot of business, you may have to buy one of those external, it's a terabyte, you know, it's not big, but it holds a lot of data. You may use one of those. Now, if you can't get your computer fixed, yes, you're going to be out the computer, possibly. But now they may be able to completely dump the computer, which means you lose all your data, reset it back to factory blank. You plug in your hard drive and you can restore it yourself. Does that make sense? So that is a safety net.
There's a program called Carbonite and another one called Mozy. They're the only two that I know of. But they automatically back up every time you do something, and it stores the files exactly as you have on your computer. And it's actually pretty darn inexpensive. I've used it myself for
About
years.
$50 a year.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Well, just make sure that when you use those things, please don't respond to a solicitation saying use us. You seek out your own and you contact them. Because if they send you a solicitation after today, you've all decided it may be a good idea to back things up. And wow, what a coincidence. I received an email where someone said they would back up my computer, maybe even for free. That could be a hoax, right? That could be a virus. So if you're reaching out to somebody, and talk amongst yourselves, because it sounds like some of you already do it, and you can say, well, how do you like it? You know, have you been duped? Is it a real deal? And they'll tell you it's good or what have you. All right, I hate to take up the floor.
I think it's back to pencil and paper.
There's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be said.
I don't even
What have I missed with some of these things that y'all have had on the, especially the election scandal? And then I'd like to,
the police can. If you have somebody who calls you and saying they're a representative of a police organization like the PBA or something like that, and they're saying we'd like you to make a donation to support the PBA or POAG or police officers or sheriffs or widows fund or something like that, those are scams as well. Those types of organizations will not call you on the phone and ask or solicit anything from you. So if you receive one of those types of phone calls, the best thing you can do is say, Don't contact me anymore, take my name off of your phone and mailing list, and hang up the phone. So we don't solicit that. Those police organizations, those fraternal organizations, they don't solicit that way either. So that's just another type of a scam. But just ignore those, they're not real.
We do appreciate your support. I mean, we do. We appreciate the public when they are very benevolent and they do give to some of these organizations, and they are real. POAG is real, BBA is real, Fraternal Order Police are real. All those places are real places, and they do charitable things, not even sometimes directly for police officers, but even in the community they'll make donations, et cetera. If you want to give to those places, what Lieutenant Dix is saying, seek them out and make sure that, you know, when you're sending them money, you're sending it to the right folks. That's all we're saying on that.
When they call you, you can ask them and they will say, because we've asked them, okay, well, how much of this is actually going to the police?
That's a good question.
And they'll break it down and they're like, well, you know.
And if they can't
Generally
It goes to the
about
police, the rest
7%.
goes to somebody, the rest goes, so, yeah. It's not good to give them the phone.
Let me make this.
Somebody warned me about that years ago, so when I get a call like that, I always say, and this is what they told me to say, if you'll send me your literature in the mail, you know, I'll read it and consider it.
Good point.
And then they usually just hang up.
Let me introduce Sheriff Bean. Probably everybody knows Sheriff Bean already, but if you don't, this is Sheriff Bean. Lieutenant Buchanan, with the Sheriff's Office. I appreciate y'all coming to us.
Drop in offices or just
Thank you.
drop by?
Y'all being with us.
When you said that long ago about somebody remotely, if somebody can remotely get into your computer,
Yes,
I mean, I've seen that at work for somebody from,
Right.
it's supposed to be in it, but like, you look at the
Absolutely.
computer and the things moving around.
Mhm.
If that's happening to your computer at home, what do you, if you shut your computer off, will that make it, or does
You
it
would
already
want-
have it by then?
You would want to disconnect from the internet.
Okay.
That is their gateway in. And so if you have a wire, you could unplug the wire. If you're on wireless, then you would have to disconnect your wireless. Now, I'm not a computer expert, okay? So at that point, because your next question is, when can I plug it back in? I don't have the answer, because if you wait 5 seconds to plug it back in, because it may still be there. They may have embedded the virus, as you said already. Your better option may be to take it immediately to the computer place and get it purged. That would be a good point. Okay, an hour just isn't enough time. I've got very little time left. I would like to go into the other types of what would maybe traditional crime, not computer crime. And feel free while we're talking to move around and get your coffee and donuts while we're talking. You don't have to raise your hand. If you want to share with us, you can. Again, violent crime, it makes the news daily. So violent crime does happen. We're not suggesting it doesn't happen. But it doesn't happen at the rate that you may be led to believe it does. Okay, so I think that getting here this morning, probably none of you are armed robbed. That's just a safe bet. And so odds are you won't be armed robbed today when you leave. Odds are. Could it happen? Yes, it could happen. We don't want to be so foolish as to believe that if we don't think about it, it won't happen. That's just not the case. We could all be robbed. I could be robbed myself. We could have some bad guy approach us and do whatever. But odds are against it. However, I think that we should be smart. We should be wise, and I think that's what comes with age is wisdom. And what's the adage is wisdom is wasted on the young or the youth. So I think that's probably true. Some of the primary safety keys, and I spoke to you earlier today when we were outside. It's the traditional means. If you're with folks when you're out, you're less likely to be a target. Have you all heard that before? Strength in numbers. It doesn't have to be a big group, but if you put yourself in a bad guy's shoes and you're wanting to make money, which is why I'm going to go commit this crime, do I want to work hard for my money? Probably not, or I would have a job. Not a job robbing people. So I'm going to select people that look easy to rob. So is it easier to rob an individual or a group of people. Right, an individual. There's no risk of me being overpowered. There's no risk of somebody being able to call for help, etc. So there's less risk for me, there's less resistance for me as a bad guy if I select an individual. So there is some truth, I believe, to being with other folks. Somebody else, and I believe you said it, Ms. Ellis, this morning, having a confident air when you walk around. There was a couple of cases that Todd had. They happened to be at Walmart, and it was very unusual. It was daytime muggings, if you will. And a mugging is kind of a general term. It was a strong-arm robbery is what it was, which means a man, it happened to be a man, approached some women, and he snatched their purse. In one case, he shoved the woman down, is that right, Tom? Mm-hmm. And ran away. Now, when we look at Walmart, have you ever been to Walmart and be empty? Have you ever been able to park close to the front of the building?
7 o'clock in the morning.
This was in the afternoon, right, Tom?
This was in the afternoon, and she had a grandkid in the buggy with her.
Okay, so it was in the afternoon. If I'm not mistaken, it was a weekend.
In the store?
Saturday.
No, I don't know.
He got called Saturday, might happen on a Wednesday. He did it twice. He got called the second time.
The second time was Saturday.
Second time was Saturday.
My point is that if we're sitting at home, who doesn't go to Walmart?
I try really hard not to.
But you still go, I bet.
Yeah, but
Okay,
very, very
all
rarely.
right, point made. Thank you. Yeah, so we all go to Walmart, and when we sit at home before we go, we're thinking, I need to be safe. I'm going to be very deliberate and conscious about this. I'm not going to go to Walmart at 4 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so I'm being deliberate. I'm going to go at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There'll be a lot of people there. There's always a lot of people there. So that's a pretty safe place to go. I mean, it seems to make sense. It's well lit. It's an open parking lot. And then we have this goofy guy go and commit a crime up there. And so oftentimes, you know, we can try to do these things, and it still sometimes is not going to help. But let me tell you, and I'm not, some of you may know the people involved in this, and so we're not bashing them. We're never going to bash a victim, all right? But what we would like to do is learn from that situation. And so what could they have possibly done different? And so what we noticed, what Todd noticed, when we were looking at the video of this crime, is that these folks were not paying attention. And so they were very involved in, some of them. Do you see people's faces much anymore when you're walking around the store? Or you see the top of their head? Yes. Okay. Also, sometimes you're just engaged in a conversation with somebody. I think the one lady may have been preoccupied with the youngster.
Yeah, she was putting the kid in the car and left the pocketbook in the buggy. They pushed the buggy.
And you may. And so listen, let me say this again. We are not being critical of them. Okay? We just want to share the information so that maybe you won't do the same thing. That's all. That's all we're saying. They did nothing wrong, these folks, these women. They just could have been maybe a little more vigilant and maybe deterred. And here's why we think so. This guy sat and watched several people come out of the store. He didn't get the first person. And what we noticed is that when people would come out of the store, you know you have a crosswalk there, right? And you know cars are supposed to stop. But most of us, probably most of us in here, would still stop and look to make sure that I'm not going to get my tail ran over. Now, when people came out and they looked, he was actually standing off to the right, wasn't it, Todd? If you're walking out the store, he's standing off to the right,
I think so. Yeah.
where the buggy corral is. When people would come out and they'd look left and right to make sure a car wasn't going to hit them, they could see that guy. And we can only speculate because the guy wasn't super cooperative with us when Todd did a good job finding him and arresting him. Once you've identified the bad guy, they don't want to fool with you. You've seen him. Does that make sense? You can identify them and you've seen them.
Eye contact.
Another good point. And this is just speculation. I'm not a psychiatrist. But it's a lot harder for me to treat you bad, to victimize you, if we've had some eye contact and I realize you're a person. You're a human being. You remind me of my mom, my grandma, my dad, et cetera. There's a little bit of psychology going on there, but if you're just a thing carrying what I want, then it's much easier to victimize you. Does that make a little sense? And so I think there's some truth to that psychology. And so maybe a couple of things happened. When those other potential victims came out, they identified him and they looked at him and he passed on those. The people that he elected to victimize never saw him. And they were surprised when he ran up behind them and took their things. So no matter where you're at, again, strength in numbers always. Your head swivels, most of them, unless it's fused, and then even in that case, you can spin your whole body. But look around. Be aware of what is around you. If you see something you don't like, you don't have to go to your car. You can ask somebody. You can call 911 yourself. We can ask.